It is Oscar night here on OpenLine. We're talking about all the nominees, all the films that are getting a lot of buzz, the ones that you need to see if you haven't seen yet. That way you know what the conversation is about come Oscar night in March. Jason Shawhan is guiding us through all of this. He has seen a lot more of them than I have, but I'm making my list tonight, Jason, on the ones I need to catch up on. Let's jump into actress in a leading role, which is always one of the big ones that everybody looks for on award night. Jessica Chastain in the eyes of Tammy Faye. You were telling me in the break that there is a really neat Nashville connection to kind of the publicity campaign that goes into, because I don't think a lot of people know that either, Jason, is that people kind of campaign for a lot of these award shows and for the judging bodies that are voting in them.
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, it's like a whole line item on a lot of people's contracts is like this sort of promotion they have to do for awards consideration. And it was a wonderful experience when I guess this would have been back in December, maybe November, the end of last year. She and Michael Shannon were in town recording the music for an upcoming series where they play George Jones and Tammy Wynette. And they set up a screening of Eyes of Tammy Faye for local critics groups and media folks, and she did a Q&A, and she she's not just playing Tammy Faye, she's one of the producers on the film. She got this made, and it was really interesting because it's like, and this happens all the time in Los Angeles in the lead up to award season. Like there's always screenings with like talent talking about stuff, and like we just don't get that very often in Nashville, except when it's like dealing with music things. So this was it was a special kind of experience, and it was interesting to see her passion for the role and her take on what Tammy Faye represents. So it was really neat. I'm glad to see attention for it, because like you can tell that she like put her heart and soul into that film and this performance specifically.
And let's talk about her performance in this film, because Tammy Faye Bakker is such an interesting character. A lot of people probably, if they know the figure, come to this film with maybe some preconceived notions, but Tammy Faye Bakker kind of blasts through a lot of those preconceived notions. On one side, you may say, oh, well, she was one of those televangelists that was after everybody's money, but then also she's a beloved figure in the LGBTQ community. So she, and really I think the film does a good job of delving into all that.
She is a complex character, and the film does the work to like get that complexity across. And also from a very early age, setting up like the differences between like the more embracing kind of Christianity that she represents versus the dominant strains in evangelical Christianity. And it's sort of this like weird ballet that those two forces are dancing during the course of her life. And then, well, we see what Jerry Falwell does, and we see the state of modern evangelical Christianity, and it's just like, well, I guess we know who won, sadly. But what's really interesting is that her son Jay is a preacher who is sort of following in her legacy, not his father's. Just of preaching an open and accepting kind of worship, rather than apocalyptic paranoia and trying to fleece people for money, which Jim Bakker keeps on doing. And then another, Andrew Garfield, who we were talking about earlier, as Jim Bakker in this film. I mean, like that's some range. Like, I mean, you got to respect someone who does like, an avant-garde musical theater guy, Jim Bakker, and Spider-Man all in the same year. So, respect.
That is remarkable range. And if you go back and watch the old Ted Koppel interview with Jim Bakker, Andrew Garfield really has nailed down his accent. I thought that was pretty impressive. If we pop that list back up again of actress in a leading role, Olivia Colman, a lot of people are going to know her name maybe from The Crown or from other films. I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen The Lost Daughter yet, but if you have, kind of give us an inkling of why she was nominated for this.
Well, it's an incredible performance. I mean, she's great. She got her Oscar for The Favorite a few years back, which was a really nice surprise. And she is such a reliable presence. I mean, to me, she's always going to be Sophie from the British TV show Peep Show. But she is an incredible presence. And in this film, it's based on an Elena Ferrante novel. And it's just sort of about a woman coming to terms with like what motherhood means and like, you know, how society relates to that. And it's like it's an incredibly difficult role, and she does a really good job with it. And it's directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is an interesting step up, you know, from an actor who's become a director. And you know, Olivia Colman, she's one of those people that like she's never given a bad. She is like Nicole Kidman. She's never given a bad performance, and even if she's in what is overall a bad movie, she's always fascinating in it and giving 110%.
Absolutely. Moving right down on the list, Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers. Tell us about Parallel Mothers.
Parallel Mothers is amazing. Like Pedro Almodovar, he has been a reliable force in like global art cinema for decades now. But like Parallel Mothers is the first time he's gotten political in this way and dealing with you know, the legacy of the Spanish Civil War, but at the same time also working with this like almost Douglas Sirkian melodrama plot about like, you know, possible babies being switched at birth, and like, you know, the things that like independent single moms have to go through. And it's just it's a great film. Like if you enjoy his films because they're brightly colored trifles and they're fun to like, you know, have a drink with your friends and watch, you can enjoy you can enjoy this film in that way. But there's so much going on here that like, I mean, it is emotionally effective in a way that is different from the way his films are usually emotionally effective. And ultimately it is just like it gets you where you live. Like the final shot of this film is like being punched in the solar plexus with a fist wearing a velvet glove. Like it's a lot of contrasting sensations and you're not sure what's going on with it, but it just knocks you flat. And you know, Almodovar, he's great. He's great. And Penelope Cruz, you know, there was a time when she didn't get a whole lot of respect as an actress. A lot of people would like make fun of her accent and stuff. And you know, the dominant narrative was just like, oh well, she's a great actress in Spanish, but in English, no, she's a great actress, period. And she is so good in this. Like she's funny, she'll break your heart. She's like got this really pragmatic sense of humor and can just like, she can like deliver a line and just cut you to ribbons before you even know that knives were drawn. And you got to respect that. And she's really, really good in this. You know, it's a difficult sell because it deals with some really, really like intense parts of history that like get glossed over a lot. And it's just, it's such a great film. Like people are coming to see it for the melodrama and they're getting bowled over by what it's got to say about like humanity and, you know, specifically the history of Spain in the 20th century. But it's great.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about being the Ricardos so far tonight, but I think we have to talk about Nicole Kidman because there's been a lot of chatter. I know social media isn't real life, but lots of people saying, oh, was Nicole Kidman the right casting for the iconic role of Lucille Ball, and a character that so many people know and love? So curious, what about Nicole Kidman really stands out on this list? And, you know, what about her performance of Lucille Ball really stood out, do you think?
Well, for me, the thing about this performance is the makeup has gotten a lot of attention. There's some prosthetic makeup and stuff. And to me, the makeup never quite works. But what that does is it keeps you on edge. You're not allowed to become complacent and just assume that this is going to be like, you know, like, oh, well, she's playing Lucy. She's doing something interesting. It's like, it's just a touch short of being a Brechtian thing. But what she's doing, I mean, like as a film critic, you learn very early on, never underestimate Nicole Kidman. She's always making interesting choices. She's always like walking the tightrope and doing stuff that nobody else would do. And I think she brings so much to this. There are a couple scenes, like, I mean, like there are great, you know, the interactions that she has, like, you know, like making a Hollywood marriage work, dealing with the suits and all that. There's all these like separate skeins to that performance, and they're all really interesting. But like the thing to me that just sticks in the back of my head is just like there's a couple of moments where it's just her and like some random higher up at the network and stuff, and you get the feeling that like there's this genuine, I don't want to say rage because it's much more like curated and honed than that. But just in terms of like being a free thinking woman in a meeting with like some guy who's not really paying attention to what you're saying, but who can sign all the checks. Like there are moments in that film where it becomes more than what it is. Like you're just like, okay, well, this is a scene about something that ostensibly happened to Lucille Ball, but it's also telling us a story about what it means to be like an independent personality in Hollywood. And I think, it just like at this point, it's like I said earlier, like Nicole has never given a bad performance. She's been great in bad movies, but but her instincts are peerless, and I find it fascinating, truthfully. Like, I mean, there's like sort of what Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart are doing now with the way that they're taking their mainstream fame and they're using it to get really interesting films by really interesting directors made all over the world. Nicole's been doing that for a while now, and bless her for it, because she does the work with this. Like, I mean, to like someone, particularly with Lucille Ball, who's like one of the most gifted physical comedians like of the 20th century, like that's a really intimidating thing to take on. But like she does the work, and I say that a lot, but I mean, like, actors do the work, that's their job. But I mean, like, she brings it with this, and it's like, she's got an Oscar for The Hours, but like it's never a bad thing when Nicole gets an Oscar. Listen to me, calling her by her first name like that, like that's incredibly presumptuous. But it's like, but that's the thing. That's the magic of Nicole Kidman. It's like she's like our patron movie star in Nashville, and like much respect for that.
I'd like to sneak in the last one in our category to round out before we have to sneak in a break. Speaking of hard roles to take on, imagine playing the People's Princess, Princess Diana and Spencer. Kristen Stewart, what'd you think of her performance?
Oh, she's incredible. It's a great film. Like, I love what Pablo Larraín is doing with this film. It's similar to what he did with Natalie Portman as Jackie Kennedy in Jackie a few years back. He's got this way of like pondering like women in politics and like how they confront the making of their own legacy. And with Jackie, it was sort of like an experimental kind of thing. And this is like, it's like being in a haunted house, but nobody's dead yet. And the thing that's haunting is the legacy of the British royal family. I think she's really, really good in it. I mean, but the thing is, Kristen Stewart is a great actress. She's been so good she's so good that she was in a movie in the early aughts called The Safety of Objects, which I don't even think it's in print anymore, but it's really good. It's based on some A.M. Holmes short stories, and she's in it playing like an androgynous character, and she's so good in it that in the first review of it that Roger Ebert published, he thought that she was a boy playing the part because of how well she sinks into this part. And like, she's great in Panic Room with Jodie Foster. I mean, like, and she's been so good for something. People like, whenever somebody says like, oh, Kristen Stewart from Twilight, I'm just like, I mean, yes, that's true. She starred in the Twilight films, but it's like, that's 5 films out of, dozens that she's done. And she's been, again, like Nicole Kidman, she's been making such interesting choices. Like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, she did a film called Clouds of Sils Maria a few years back with Juliette Binoche and the director Olivier Assayas. And she won a César Award, which is the French equivalent of the Oscars. She's the only American to have ever won a César. Like, that was the kind of impression she was making. And she's just, the thing about her, and what I love about her work, what I love about Robert Pattinson and Daniel Radcliffe, and all these people who got famous and rich making these beloved franchises, is that they're taking that cachet and they're taking their fame and they're using it to like better film art, to like, get things made that otherwise wouldn't. Because like, you can't go to like Warner Brothers or Universal and say like, hey, make my weird movie. But if you get Kristen Stewart or Nicole Kidman or Robert Pattinson or Daniel Radcliffe who say like, I want to do this, they'll like, okay, where do we sign? So it's just, it's like a game of chess but fame is like a secret level up that lets you move in extra space. And more power to him. I think she's great in this. I think this category is a really tough one because there's so many great ones.
All right, well, we've got to pay the bills real quick, Jason. We'll be back with Best Picture talk after this.